I used to own an Airbnb house a few years back. At first, it felt like the perfect way to make some extra money. The property was in a popular vacation area, and people booked it almost every week. My wife and I were thrilled watching it take off. But over time, the excitement started to fade. Managing everything, cleaning schedules, constant guest messages, handling check-ins and check-outs, it slowly became exhausting. I was trying to balance it all while keeping up with my full-time job, and it started to feel like too much. Still, for a while, everything went smoothly. Most guests were polite and predictable. They'd arrive, send a quick text to let me know they were in, maybe ask a small question during their stay, and then message again when they left. It was routine. That's why I didn't think twice when a young couple booked the house one weekend. I sent them the door code as usual. They messaged me to say everything looked fine, and I went about my day. But that night, everything changed. It was around 9 p.m. I was winding down, ready to head to bed, when I got a text from the man staying there. It was short and vague. He said he was about to call me. Something about that message made my stomach tighten. A minute later, the phone rang. When I picked up, his tone was calm but insistent. He told me the water in the house wasn't working. I apologized right away, even though I had no idea how that was possible. Still, I knew it had to be fixed immediately. A house without water is unacceptable. I asked if I could come by to check it out. He agreed, polite as ever, and a few minutes later, I was driving over. It was a cold night. As I turned into the driveway, the first thing I noticed was strange. There were 2 cars parked outside. I paused for a moment, staring at them. Why would a young couple need 2 cars for a single night? Maybe they had friends over. Technically against the rules, but not something I cared enough to argue about. I brushed it off. I walked up to the door, knocked once, and then entered the code. The door unlocked, and I stepped inside. Silence. Thick, heavy silence. I expected them to be waiting for me, maybe standing near the kitchen or calling out from the living room. But the house was empty, or at least it felt that way. Something about the stillness felt wrong, but I didn't want to overthink it. I just wanted to solve the problem and get out. I headed to the basement to check the main water valve. If there was a leak or a burst pipe, I'd know right away. But everything looked normal. No water on the floor. No broken pipes. Nothing. Then, as I twisted the valve slightly, I heard water rushing through the pipes again. I turned it a bit more and realized it had been completely shut off by hand. That's when my uneasiness turned into a slow, crawling fear. Who would have turned off the water? There was no reason for it to be off. And since no one else had been there, it had to be them. But why? Why would they do that, unless they wanted me to come here? Maybe they were trying to get a discount, I thought. Maybe they were staging a problem. But deep down, I knew there was something more. I decided to leave and call them from my car, but I never made it up the stairs. The moment I turned toward the basement steps, I heard the door above me creak open. Then came the sound of footsteps, more than one pair. They were slow, deliberate, descending into the basement. My chest tightened, and then I saw them. 3 men appeared at the bottom of the stairs. Not a young couple, not even close. These men were older, rough-looking, and none of them matched the voice I'd heard on the phone. "Is it fixed?" one of them asked. The voice was familiar. It was the man I'd spoken to earlier. But now, seeing him face to face, I realized he was much older than he had let on. I forced a shaky smile and told him the water was running again, pretending like everything was fine. I said the valve might have tightened on its own, avoiding any blame. My heart was racing, and all I could think about was getting out of that basement. But they didn't move. They just stood there, staring, watching. The silence pressed against my chest like a weight. "Let me know if you need anything else," I muttered, stepping carefully between them. My only goal was to reach the stairs. But as I walked past the last man, my eyes caught something that made my blood run cold. There was a gun tucked into the back of his waistband. For a split second, the basement felt smaller. The air felt heavier. Every instinct in my body screamed at me to run, but I forced myself to walk, fast, but not too fast. I climbed the stairs, trying not to show panic. They didn't follow. They just stood there, watching me leave. I stepped outside and hurried to my car, my hands shaking as I fumbled with the keys. The drive home was a blur. The only thing I remember clearly is the pounding of my heart. When I got home, I woke my wife and told her everything. She didn't hesitate. She told me to call the police, and she was right. These weren't the guests we thought they were. Something was very wrong. About 20 minutes later, an officer called me. He said the house appeared empty and asked if I could unlock the door. I gave him the code instead. 20 minutes after that, he called again. The house was still empty. The next day, the truth started to unravel. The credit card used for the booking was stolen. Several expensive items, decorations, appliances were missing from the house. And as for the young couple, they never existed. The entire booking had been a lie. The one part I still can't explain is why they lured me there. Why turn off the water? Why wait in the basement? Maybe they hoped to stay longer without paying. Maybe they planned to rob me at gunpoint. But if that was the case, why didn't they? 3 armed men led me into a basement and stood between me and the exit. They had every opportunity to do whatever they wanted. But they didn't. They just watched me walk away. To this day, I don't understand why. But one thing became clear that night. I would never set foot in that house while guests were inside again. A few months later, we shut down the Airbnb and rented the place out long-term instead. I still think about that night more often than I'd like to admit. How close I might have been to never coming home. How easily things could have ended differently. And that's the thing about stories like this. You never expect them to happen to you until they do.